Fantasy football. T5 League Beauty Review.
Alright, so we're back with our fifth matchup of the WR1 Elimination Bracket Challenge. In this matchup, we have McConkey of the LA Chargers, and he's going to be going up against Jerry Jeudy of the Cleveland Browns. McConkey coming off of a fantastic rookie season. Now, in comparison to Jeudy, McConkey has Justin Herbert throwing him the ball, which is a better quarterback than Jeudy has had over the course of his career. His first 4 years in Denver saw a little bit of a carousel at the quarterback position, and then once he was traded over to Cleveland, he had multiple different quarterbacks throwing to him. So it's really hard to judge a guy based off of all those different quarterbacks. How was he expected to get the timing with the routes down? How was he expected to get the intuition with the quarterback, like on the same page? There's a lot, like wide receivers and quarterbacks, most of the time, they come up to the line, they see the exact same thing, and they execute. So I do think that everything is kind of stacked against Jeudy in this matchup. With McConkey, we have some consistency in a 4,000-plus yard passer with Justin Herbert. We haven't seen Herbert's true potential yet, even though it's unlikely with the LA Chargers. Now that Jim Harbaugh is on the team, I'm expecting to see a more balanced approach to the game, which is going to be centered around a very strong run game and a stout defensive effort on that side of the ball. So this matchup, however, it really isn't going to get closer when we compare two different players and have to make a decision on who's going to advance. This is virtually the exact same outcome fantasy-wise. So we're definitely going to have to consider the other variables that we were just discussing in making our decision. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the stats. So now that we got the stats up, we're going to start with McConkey, and we'll notice that he has 5 weeks where he was a bust, but he did have 3 weeks where he was a boom, and he was able to acquire more than 20 points. He ended up with a player ranking of 12th on the year, which as a rookie, that's very impressive. You know, who could have expected him to have generated such results? And then when we really dive into the stats, you'll notice after week 11, he is posting high consistent numbers. We're going to see 2 of his boom weeks come within that time period, and there was a game where he didn't play against Kansas City. His best game of the season actually came in week 17 against the New England Patriots. In that game, he had 8 receptions for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was targeted 10 times. And those aren't even season highs. In week 13, against Atlanta, he had 9 receptions for 117 yards and on 12 targets. The difference between those two, fantasy-wise, happens to be the touchdowns and the points they attribute to the game. But he did have 20.7 points in that game against Atlanta. Okay, let's go ahead and shift focus over to Jeudy. Jeudy had 5 bust weeks, so we have a tie there. But he had 4 boom weeks, and you'll never believe it. He ended up tied for 12th in the fantasy player rankings. Him and McConkey both ended up 12th. When we start looking through Jeudy's games, you're going to see one big week, and that was week 13 against Denver, where he just goes off. He had 9 receptions for 235 yards. So he was averaging 26.1 yards per reception. He had 1 touchdown in the game, and then he managed to end up with 40.5 points in that game. He clearly in the back end, similar to McConkey, started to really step it up. That's where we see that he exceeds 20 points on 4 different occasions after having a rough couple weeks there between 5, 6, and 7. And that was Washington, Philadelphia, and Cincinnati. So now that we discussed both of the players' best weeks and how they did when it came to fantasy points, let's look at their season totals. So we'll go back over to McConkey. McConkey had 82 receptions on the year for 1,149 yards. He had 7 touchdowns on 112 targets. This is how he managed to get his 240.9 fantasy points. Now on the other side, we have Jeudy, who had 90 receptions for 1,229 yards, 4 touchdowns on 145 targets. And he also had 240.9 fantasy points. So we see efficiency from McConkey definitely exceeds the efficiency from Jeudy, but once again, I don't think that we need to necessarily place blame on the wide receiver. I think that the quarterback situation is going to be very important and pivotal as we discuss the upcoming fantasy season, especially when fantasy owners look into where they're going to rank Jerry Jeudy. Because as of right now, I don't think anybody knows who's throwing him the ball, right? Like, there's a few mock drafts out there that place a couple different quarterbacks getting drafted and possibly being the answer. We could see a crazy acquisition in the offseason. It's highly unlikely that we're going to see a major quarterback move, I think, if it's not in the draft for Cleveland. So we could expect Deshaun Watson to come back if he was able to actually recover from his prior injury. And that's going to be our separator. Because when we talk about Lad McConkey, this guy is going to go into his second year. It's one more year knowing the playbook, one more year knowing Herbert's timing, one more year in the offensive system with Harbaugh. They just picked up Najee Harris to give him a little bit of support in the running back field. Believe me, when we get into the running backs, you'll hear how I feel about Harris. But it just seems that McConkey is primed to go. I have a feeling he is going to be a sneaky pickup. There's a very good possibility that he's going to end up in the top 10 when this is all said and done. And then on the other side, with Jeudy, it all depends on whose quarterback is, and until we have that answer, I just am not confident that he's going to do, or he would be the better option for next year. So, McConkey, you have taken the victory today. So, Lad McConkey advances to the next round. Jerry Jeudy's out of there. The next matchup that we're going to be covering is going to be the Terry McLaurin versus Calvin Ridley matchup. This was supposed to be done after the prior video, but hey, things happen. For a recap, you can check out any of the other videos within the channel. There's also going to be the fantasy football playlist. It's going to have everything there. And then we always appreciate hearing back from you.